Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Is Neutrality Not Enough? This will be Part 11, Chapter 11. Shota hurries along the hallway filled with police officers and other personnel with an irritated frown on his face. It's the middle of the night, and the station has just called saying he has to come here as fast as possible because they had an emergency. Shota almost called off. He's busy finding his missing student, nonetheless, together with almost every other hero, and he really wants that to take priority. Then Tsukauchi called and said he really had to come, and well, here he is. At 3 a.m, in the station, which is oddly filled with police officers. They all seem stressed out about something, and a weird nervous energy fills the hallways. When Shota strides into the detective's office, he finds the man writing in his notebook, whilst studying some files that are spread all over the desk. I hope I didn't come here just to give you a fresh view on one of your cases. Tsukauchi looks up. Shota notes that his hair is messy, and that the white shirt the detective wears under his brown coat is all crinkled. Good evening, Eraserhead, the detective says with a tense frown. Shota stalks to the couch and sits down. So, he asks, not wanting to waste time waiting for the detective to start talking. Tsukauchi puts down his pen with a sigh. Well, we caught Al. Shota raises an eyebrow. Okay, and this time will we get any new information out of him? Tsukauchi shakes his head with a chuckle. No, you misunderstood. Al was caught, and now we know his identity. If Shota had been drinking any coffee now, he's sure he would have spilled all of it out of surprise. What? Kamui Woods caught him without the mask on. Shota moves to stand next to the detective and looks over his shoulder. Who is it? Tsukauchi's smile disappears and he wordlessly hands Shota one of the papers. Quickly, he scans it. Codename suspect. Al. Occupation. Informant. Civilian name. Midoriya Izuku. Shota's eyes refuse to read further than that third line. Izuku Midoriya. His son's best friend. He almost laughs because of the absurdity. Of course it had to be him. It all makes sense now, though, the way Midoriya acted sometimes when he was over for dinner. How his reactions to certain things were just a little bit off. How he had been the one to bring Todoroki and his siblings over. Hell, even the green eyes, the dead parents, the quirklessness. There were too many coincidences. I heard your son is friends with Midoriya, Tsukauchi says quietly. I understand if this case has become too personal for you because of that, and if you'd want to step away from it. Shota takes a deep breath and buries all his feelings somewhere deep down. Then he shakes his head. The detective looks at him questioningly. Shota rolls his eyes. No, my personal feelings won't be a problem for this case. Tsukauchi nods. All right, but if that does happen, I'm removing you from the case. He hands Shota a few of the papers laying on the table and continues. Now, let's prepare this interrogation. A while later, Shota and the detective enter the interrogation room. Outside the interrogation room, Shota notices Principal Nezu standing behind the one-way glass. Seems like the rat found the case interesting. Or he saw a way to exploit the informant. Shota shuddered at the thought of all the chaos the principal would create with the help of someone who was such a big source of information. When they enter, Shota finds Al sitting on the iron chair opposite from them with his hands cuffed to the chair. Tsukauchi had assured him that they'd secured Al enough that the elusive informant wouldn't be able to get away. It seems they've succeeded in that. The informant sits, slumped forward with his green hood up so none of his face is visible. If it weren't for a few curls that were peeking out of the hood, Shota might have had some hope that Al wasn't who they thought he was. Now he swallows down all his personal feelings, all the anger and betrayal. He wants to be part of this interrogation, and it would be irrational to be kicked out by Tsukauchi for something as useless as feelings. Tsukauchi puts down the folder with all the files and takes place on one of the chairs opposite to Al. Shota sits down on the other chair. Good evening, Al. Or should I say Izuku Midoriya? It's been a while. Shota carefully observes Al for any reaction, but the informant stays silent. Tsukauchi seems to come to the same conclusion because he continues. It was quite the surprise when I received the news that you hadn't only been caught, but also that your identity was no longer a secret. No reaction. Awkwardly, the detective clears his throat and glances at Shota. Shota just raises his eyebrow, egging him to continue. Now, you have some serious charges against you, so this will be an interrogation. You have the right to remain silent. I also am obligated to inform you I have a truth-based quirk that I will be using during this interrogation. I will be able to tell when you are lying. With a frown, Shota observes Al, who up until this point hasn't said anything or reacted whatsoever, and everything about the informant's body language screams defeated. He shares a look with Tsukauchi, and he knows they share the same feeling. That everything about this is wrong. Al doesn't have his usual air of sarcasm and playfulness around him. His posture doesn't exude anything resembling the feeling of power anymore, or the carefully concealed anger that always seemed to be simmering just below the surface. Worst of all, the informant isn't observing anything anymore. Before, his eyes were always scanning the room or a person, plans forming, gathering information. Now, Al hasn't even looked up once. Tsukauchi takes out his notepad and pen. Shota moves to sit more upright on his cold iron chair. Even though it's summer, the room feels chilly, and the metal furniture seems to be made from ice. Your name is Izuku Midoriya, correct? Silence. You are 16 years old, and you live near Shizuoka Prefecture. Again, no reaction. Shota feels his irritation creeping up, and from the sound of irritated scribbling on his notepad, the same appears to be for Tsukauchi. Shota sighs. You know that not answering our questions won't help you. Something in the informant's body tenses. It's subtle, and Shota almost didn't notice it. He glances at the detective, and the man nods slightly. Seems he noticed it too. Finally, a fucking reaction. If I may interrupt, I might have something that could make our informant a bit more talkative. A deal of some sorts. Of course the rat has planned some kind of deal. Al seems to perk up at the mention of a deal, if only slightly. Tsukauchi looks at Shota with raised eyebrows, and Shota nods. Let's see if this works. The door of the interrogation room opens, and not much later the principal of UA is seated on Shota's shoulder. No, don't ask questions. It is what it is. And Shota has to suppress a shudder at the sadistic gleam in the rat's eyes. The principal folds his paws in front of him, and for a few minutes he just observes the informant, the entire room being silent except for the buzzing of the light and the distant hustle and bustle of the police station. Shota is starting to think that Nezu is holding a one-sided staring contest when the principal breaks the silence. You know, you have fascinated me for quite some time, Al. Shota isn't entirely sure whether that is a good thing. I hope it is all right if I use your civilian name, Midoriya. For manners' sake, you can use mine. Nezu, too. Nezu doesn't give the informant time to react, because he continues on. I've been told that normally you're quite talkative, so I hope to help you with that by striking a deal. That gets a reaction, because Al lifts his head, and staring at them with dull green eyes is Midoriya. Shota swallows. The spark in the kid's eyes seems to have gone out a bit. Now that he's looking at Midoriya, it truly dawns on him. He is Al. This is the kid that was too quick for the police to catch for almost a year. He can practically feel the glee radiate off of Nezu at Midoriya's reaction. What do you think of making a deal, Midoriya? A nod. Shota sees a bit of spark returning to those green eyes and a miniature change in posture. It's enough to assure Shota that the informant is all alert again, with a million plans whirring in his mind. He's positive the other two haven't noticed. To them, Midoriya still looks like a defeated teenager who will take any bargain without much resistance. Before I came here, I looked into your background a bit, Midoriya. You have quite the tragic one, don't you? Born quirkless in this society, an absent father, and a mother who died in a villain attack when you were just 13 years old. You have quite the heroic heart, though, going by the sludge incident where you were the only one who tried to save our future student before All Might arrived. You even wanted to apply to UA in your first year of middle school, am I correct? Nezu pauses, and Shota is getting a bad feeling about where the direction of this speech is going. Looking at Midoriya, that feeling is confirmed, because the kid is frowning slightly, and his leg keeps bouncing up and down. Even so, he gives a small nod, and that's all the confirmation Nezu needs, because he continues. I know that you've always prided yourself in your neutrality, but perhaps it's time to choose a side. It's at this comment that Shota realizes the rat fucked up. Owl doesn't do sides. It's his #1 rule. Come to UA, Midoriya. The room goes silent, and all three of them look expectantly at Midoriya. Shota realizes the teen is trembling with anger. His fists are tightly curled at the sides of the chair. He's looking down at his lap, though, so Shota isn't sure what his expression is. No. It's said quietly, but Shota can hear the well-concealed anger in Midoriya's voice. Nezu doesn't notice, though, because for all his intelligence, the principal is still an animal, and animals don't understand human body language. The rat may have studied the body language of humans and usually gets away with it, but the subtleties go unnoticed by the principal. No, Nezu takes the quiet answer as doubt and continues on. You wouldn't even have to join the hero course. You could join general education and become my personal student. You have so much potential, Midoriya. I said no. This time a warning is laced within the words. The kid's face is still concealed by his hood, though. If Nezu could have blinked, Shota's sure he would have. Tsukauchi eyes Shota with a question in his eye. He shakes his head at the detective. Let this play out. The heroes might have wronged you in the past, but they aren't that bad, Midoriya. Come to UA and see for yourself. I said no. Midoriya looks up at them with ice-cold fury in his eyes. He strains against his handcuffs in an attempt to jump up from his chair. I'm not joining a hero school, and I'm not choosing a side. Nezu seems to want to interrupt, but Midoriya is not done and continues to shout. Why the fuck does everyone want me to choose a side today? First all for one. Shota and the detective pale at that. He's sure Nezu would have paled too if he had been able to. Then Krusty Musty Shigaraki, and now you. Why can't I be on my own side? Breathing heavily, the teen slumps back in his chair, though his ice-cold fury penetrates the air like a heavy blanket. Tsukauchi holds out his hands placatingly. Midoriya, you don't understand. I don't understand! Midoriya thrashes against his handcuffs and looks at them with a withering glare. Why the hell are neither of you looking for your missing student, huh? Isn't student safety something you preach about at UA, Nezu? Tsukauchi, as someone with such a big role in the League's investigation, don't you have something better to do? And don't you need to look for your precious missing student, Aizawa? Shota flinches at the accusation, because yes, he should be looking for his student right now. Judging from Tsukauchi's expression, he isn't the only one who feels this way. Nezu must have heard something interesting, though, because he leans forward and says, You know where the League's hideout is. The teen stills and looks at the principal with a calculating gaze. Shota can practically see plans being formed behind those green eyes. And what if I do? He asks, with his eyebrows raised. Nezu grins his sadistic grin. Well, Midoriya, I'm sure we could come to a different deal. Midoriya looks at him suspiciously. I'm not going to UA. No, nothing like that. I was thinking more of something in the direction of you giving us the location of young Bakugo and some help from your services in exchange for your freedom. Of course, that would only be for a limited amount of time. Midoriya hums. What exactly do you need my help with, and how would this partial freedom work? Well, I think we could use your help on a specific case, one of which I'll only tell the details if you agree. You'd be free from the commission hunting you for as long as you're working on this case. For a long moment, the two look at each other in the eye. Then, get me a pen and paper. I'll write out the deal. Nezu cackles, delighted. Wonderful. Shota has the sinking feeling that two devils are signing a contract with each other. A bit later, the deal is sealed and Nezu and Tsukauchi leave the room. Shota stays behind to have a talk with Midoriya. The informant is staring somewhere off in space, all the focus that laid in his eyes a few minutes ago gone. Instead, his face is etched in a haunted way, and Shota is briefly reminded of the mutilated body from Muscular. This kid was the one responsible for that. Shota wonders if it was his first kill. It's not his place to ask, though. He coughs to get Midoriya's attention. Then he leans forward and gives the kid his best, disappointed teacher stare. Lucky for him, the informant has the sense to look guilty. Was your friendship with Hitoshi a lie? Shota can't help the bite that lies in his question. Now that the professional part of the interrogation is over, he can't help but feel angry and disappointed. Midoriya looks at him in shock. What? No, I truly met him by accident at that cafe. I only realized who he was later on. The kid looks at him with panic in his eyes. I would never fake a friendship and use someone in that way. With a sigh, Shota slumps back in his seat. Midoriya is honest. He can tell. And that makes it so much more difficult to be angry. Still. You tell Hitoshi about this hole. He waves around his hands in Midoriya's direction. Second identity. If you don't do it soon, I will do it, and that will be a lot less pleasant for you. The kid gulps and looks down at his lap with something akin to shame on his face. I will. Wordlessly, Shota stands and leaves the room, leaving Izuku Midoriya alone with his thoughts and worries. When Izuku gets home a few hours later, he first of all has a well-deserved mental breakdown. He's still reeling from this entire night, and having a meeting with All for One and Principal Nezu on that same night was absolutely terrifying. The fact that blood keeps reappearing on his hands also doesn't help. He's tried to wash them already over a dozen times, but the blood refuses to go away. Maybe it just exists in his head and he is slowly going crazy. Anyway, after that he lays in bed for the rest of the day with the curtains drawn and the covers over his head. Somewhere along the line he messages Hitoshi to ask if they could meet in a few days. He gets a worried response back, and Izuku feels a stab of guilt in his gut. That reminds him of All for One's threat, and sends him straight into a panic attack. He's fine. Truly. After that, he sits with his phone in his hand staring at his dad's phone number. Just know the offer to come back is always open. That sentence keeps going through his head on loop, and Izuku almost considers it. It would be so much easier to leave this mess right now. It would mean his friends were still in danger, though, and that is not something Izuku can risk. So he closes his phone and continues to stare at the wall for another 30 minutes. It's evening when Izuku plops down on the couch to watch some TV. He savors the lingering burn smell of Dabi that hangs in the room. The villain won't be back for quite some time, if ever. The thought makes Izuku sad. It's later at night, and Izuku is munching on some popcorn, watching some stupid show where they have to guess whether an object is real or cake, when suddenly the show is cut off and a channel switch is made to the news channel. Izuku stares at the screen, confused. What the actual fuck? Breaking news! We just received word that All Might, our #1 hero, is fighting a villain here at Kamino Ward. The camera cuts to a live video of All Might being in a fist fight with no one other than All for One. Of course. Luckily, the kidnapped UA student was able to be rescued. Sources say this was possible after a tip. Izuku had to give it to them. The heroes worked fast. The fistfight between All Might and All for One comes to a close, and the Small Might form is revealed. Ooh boy, what a shock that'll be to everyone. You're next, the former #1 says to the screen, pointing a finger, as All for One is locked up and driven away by special task forces. Izuku wonders whether All Might chose a successor. He must have, seeing as his power seems to be completely gone now. And yes, Izuku did find out about One for All. After digging the internet for a while, it wasn't so difficult to trace back all the One for All holders. Izuku slumps back on the couch with a sigh. Luckily, All for One was arrested. That was one less pissed-off person to worry about. Shiggy would never be able to threaten his loved ones the way All for One could. Speaking about the League, they unfortunately got away. Fuck. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 11 of Is Neutrality Not Enough? Chapter 12 will be up next, which will be the last full chapter, and Chapter 13 of this fic is actually just a very short, quick epilogue, so the next time I post for this one will be both of those included together. I'd love to hear your thoughts and reactions to kind of how things have been twisted here a bit. I like the fact of how the author did some of the parallels, keeping Izuku holding that line of neutrality, despite the fact that in a lot of other fics, where there's redemption fics or reformation fics, Izuku maybe takes the deal that Nezu offered. In this case, he says, no way, right? So there's a lot of really cool themes taking place in this fic, and I like the fact that the author keeps Izuku on point with their characterization, doesn't let him take that deal. So drop your thoughts, comments, reactions below. Again, chapters 12 and 13 will be up next to wrap this fic up. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.